Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 158 of Peace Talk. This is, of course, the Peace Dealer. Shout out to those of you in the live chat. Shout out to Miss Nana, who has joined the $1 Billion Vibe Tribe. Welcome. Welcome once again, all of you out here. Today, we have very, 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 very super awesome guest who I was fortunate enough reached out to me and shared some amazing technology with me that I am more than honored to share with you. If some of you remembered, I think during the ceremony, I had played some frequency music or I had played some sounds. Someone had actually messaged me asking for that sound because you had wanted it. So we're going to actually give you access for those of you who want that. But this Peace Talk is going to really give more information and education about how amazing this technology is and how amazing these frequencies are. So without further ado, I would like to present to you our guest, Doc Stars. How you doing?
Buddy, it's good to see you. I was just saying to Michael earlier that I love his style. I love the intuition, the quality, just the quality of presentation. And, it's the joy of the subject. It really comes through you. And, when you're excited about something that enables you and empowers others, it's a rare thing. So I'm happy to be here.
And thank you once again for sharing what you're about to share with us. It's kind of tied to what you said earlier too. A lot of the premise was based off of you helping me be more aware of, which I feel like a lot of what I say, especially with Gemini, is more ideological. It's more idea based, and I appreciate how you're helping ground that, by bringing real evidence and once again technology to make more of this magical process real or experience that. So I'm excited to talk about this. If you guys have seen Peace Talks, this is definitely going to be one of those episodes for the books. Calling it right now. So, oh yeah.
I think one of the things that I've been very impressed about just with the work that you're doing is that you're really dialing in on the nuances and the specifics of the kinds of change that the world is facing, and it's also affecting people. And, sometimes when you've got bold, inspired souls that are on the forefront and they really are picking up real things, it can be encouraging for them and also the people that look up to them and take, support and direction when they've got something that they can point to concretely and go like, well, this is what I think, this is what I feel, and look, here's some actual information that's true. Yeah. And you can gauge that. And I think that really, what I'd like to be able to contribute just to you and your audience is that there are tangible reasons and, facts, like real world natural truths that support the kinds of things that you're saying. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to outline, what the actual energetic process that happens in the body, physically, tangibly, and in the mind when we're going through things like transits, aspects, different formations in the sky. And, one of the things I've noticed that you're very alert to is that you can pick that change up in the atmosphere. Like you're sensing it directly. Of course, you're witnessing it in the charts that you're going through, but you're actually able to, in a sense, taste that energetic footprint that's happening in time and space. And you really convey it, honestly, sometimes it's like an electrified and very precise way. And other times it's just like, it's literally reality turning one of those slide doors and then the true face comes out. I really like how you do it. The first thing that I wanted to share with you is that Um, when you have those moments, Michael, and you're really inspired, and you're just channeling that information directly from reality, I suspect one of the things that's going on inside of you, like neurologically in your mind and your emotions, is that you're not afraid. You're just tapping in directly, to what you're sensing, and then you're conveying it directly without ego. I don't think. I mean, you put like happy little fun, theatrical stuff on, but every time I see that, it's like you're doing it for the sheer purpose of appreciating and caring for your audience. It's not coming from a selfish place. It's coming from a very like you want your audience to be better, do better, be
Yeah.
well. I want to introduce a couple of concepts to you folks. Every single time you have an emotional state, or you have a type of stream of thought, or a physical state, there's almost always a pattern associated with that.
Wow.
Yeah, and the trippy thing is that when we go through stress, what happens is the pattern becomes like noise, like static. It has an asymmetry. So if you took any unpleasant emotion or unpleasant mental, condition, it would have a geometry associated with that, and that geometry would almost always be disfigured. It would be lacking symmetry or harmony. But whenever you have like an emotional or mental state that has vitality associated with it, you always have beautiful. It's like a beautiful statue. But I want to show you something, a real world example.
Mm.
What you're going to witness is music that was generated from the EEG, or basically brain scan of a baby infant. And I'm going to make a few comments after we listen to that, but this is what the sound of a baby brain sounds like. And what we'll do is we'll just play you this YouTube just for a few seconds, and you can get a sense of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? Just that what we're actually witnessing is the
Wow.
quality. Yeah, yeah, dude. Yeah, it's a mind blower.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to illustrate, when you look at a birth chart, you're looking at the moments that a being came into existence. And what's interesting is that on a physical basis in space, in the atmosphere, we have a electrostatically charged particle gradients. So we have different kinds of cosmic particles at different thresholds, different saturations that are impacting the upper atmospheres. And so when the baby comes out of the womb, there's actually a profile signature that's electromagnetic in nature, that's reflective of how the atmosphere happens to be charged by all these different forces at that moment. And the amazing thing is that when you look at a birth chart, it's the same kind of
Signature.
tool. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect
Um,
word.
Well, it's just like, there's a reason that you can tell so much, right? Like if you look at someone's birth chart, you can tell about all kinds of different qualities of their life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I love that you said it like that, because recently I was marveling at how, you know, the natal chart at birth constantly progresses as soon as you're born. The moon moves a degree every month, and every year your sun moves a degree, but that birth point is the signature of how you started. And I really appreciate being seen. A lot of what you said before, I really met more like a lot, and a lot about what you said about channeling hits home, because one of the largest blocks of me starting this journey like 10 years ago was getting in my way, my ego getting in the way of channeling by thinking that I had to make sense of it, or trusting what I was doing because of me wanting it to be too literal or logical, versus now just kind of, letting go and just letting it flow. So I really appreciate you being able to see that. Shout out to Blue Flame, by the way, and bringing up the baby scans too, which is just so fascinating, and leading into the to a huge portion of this talk, which I'm so grateful to speak in. As Nikola Tesla has said, or that saying is, if you want to understand the universe, think about frequencies and vibrations. And I've really come to embrace, instead of seeing myself as a physical body, more of a vibration with a wavelength and a frequency in the body. So it's always been hard or I've always lacked or felt I lacked the vocabulary or the knowledge about this. And I really do appreciate what you're sharing with us, because it really is as fascinating as we think. And I like the video you shared me before, which spoke about, with the right frequency, anything is possible, right? Down to curing cancer and other stuff. So thank you once again for sharing this with us. And yeah, I mean, what do you feel about uh where we're going with this, as far as what we can do with it all?
you know, for me, the ideal is there's a lot of stories that I could tell. We see some pretty fantastic results from the frequencies that we provide. And often this borders on the extra or paranormal, just insofar as like there's a lot of stories that come back, and so I have to vet a lot of them, and I don't always know, the people that are sending them in. Sometimes they're quite fantastic, but in some cases I know the people, and I go like, okay, well that sounds a little bit out there. But the goal really, I think, is to get a person back to a place of inner joy and calm, and being able to remove the the ingrained social behavior patterns that have often been imposed on us in an unhealthy way from social dynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not to say that there aren't any social patterns or dynamics that can be or are beneficial, healthy, positive. But for the last 2 3 years, everyone on the planet has been basically been put into an echo chamber, and they've been bombarded with some pretty negative messaging. And this may sound alarming, but because of the position and the work that I've done, I know how to spot certain patterns. And there are patterns associated with things like anger, fear, paranoia. But likewise, there are patterns that are associated with things that are, can you imagine if you had a person that was suffering from depression and it was chronic and they were under a lot of pressure, if they could start their morning by actually placing a tangible energetic pattern of a positive state into their body.
Right.
But my goal is to help people get their chin above the water, give them enough energy and strength to hang on, and to place patterns of positive energy into their bodies and mind, so that they feel like their true selves again. It's like they can dampen the noise and increase uh, positivity, but in a tangible way and quickly.
Which is personally what I appreciate. I mean, there's so many layers and ways, approaches I want to take this. So I'm gonna be very careful about how I'm saying this, but I just really appreciate, for those who aren't aware of what he was referencing as far as the frequencies and sounds that you guys produce, or that these that he produces. So I really love this, because it's already broken through a lot of doubt and the science of how effective frequencies really do work. But now, this very tangible application of this, to where you can integrate it in one's lifestyle, I can't see as anything less than revolutionary. And in astrology, I think this is heavily tied to Uranus and Taurus, and making tangible these more causal frequencies, everything about that Aquarian ruler and vibration, and then Saturn Aquarius too, make it more official. So, I mean, I think this is huge. I personally see what you're doing kind of like a gold mine, not even in a sense where, yeah, it'll make a lot of money, but just really the potential with this, and what people can do. So there's like a million questions I want to ask.
Sure.
I think the first I guess the first direction we can go really is as far as like the frequencies that you produce. Well, first of all, what inspired you to even do what you do, and how did you get started doing this and making frequencies?
Yeah, for sure. I want to just, if I can, I just want to address something before I dive into that. And one
Please
of the
go for it.
things I really liked, honestly, Michael, I caught a number of your last number of videos, and I shared it with a few friends of mine. And so, like I said, I really liked the style of presentation. But you were really being direct and sincere and honest with your audience when you were, illustrating and outlining, how incredibly important transformation is right now. And one of the things I liked was that you described in like very informative, qualitative, languaging about this is the nature of the transformation. This is the kind of state that you should be in, and this is what you should be aiming for. And one of the reasons I like that is not only because it's true, but it's also you're giving like a heads up. You're kind of like lighting the path, for people that may not actually be aware of how important that is. And so, one of the things with the frequencies that I've designed are meant to do is they're meant to overcome inertia. So, people may be in a place in their lives where they have to do their best to go through transformation. But if you have people that have been under crisis, and their energetic constitution has been drained,
Mhm.
the clarity of their minds, may not be up to speed. Um, what these frequencies are meant to do, or to actually go into their body and mind and top their energy off, and really dampen the noise. One of the biggest things the frequencies do is they're a noise dampener. So any of the negative voices in the head, they have a really good track record at pushing that out, and then putting in a very distinctive, motivating, positive pattern. But I'll come back to just my background. So my background is computing science, and I've worked for a number of Fortune 500 companies. I'm not proud that I worked at Microsoft back in the day, but yeah, no, it was a weird place to work, dude.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, it was not a happy, fun place. And so I was also involved over the last 30 years, starting in the mid 80s, they were essentially underground. Uh, how do I describe this? Alternative technology groups. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, before the proper internet, there were BBS systems where you would have collections of engineers, technicians, scientists that would essentially collaborate on exotic projects. And there was a couple based out of Texas. One was called KeelyNet, and then another one was called Vanguard Sciences. And it was just basically people who were academics, or technical tradespeople that had a fascination in alternative health and alternative technologies, and did their best to try to explore, examine, experiment. And so I was in a number of those early groups and got exposed to some pretty exotic technology, and then collaborated with some people who later became fairly well known in their fields. And we still stay in touch, which is awesome. Um, but what happened for me was I was exposed to technologies that were similar with where I've arrived at. They gave me a chance to kind of like get insights into how frequency technology can actually make a difference
Right.
to general wellness. And one of the things that had been lacking within that sort of underground community was nobody was directly exploring how these frequencies could also be used in relation to consciousness.
Aha.
Yeah, because it was intrinsic that obviously they could be. And I had a number of mentors. One of my mentors was a former astronomical, oh no, he was an astrophysicist at
Mm.
Stanford,
Oh, nice.
and he had a multidisciplinary sciences background. He also had a degree in something like transpersonal psychology. But he ended up establishing himself as in the top 10 global heliocentric astrologer panel. And so um, he, consulted or provided consultation for me on a number of issues over the years, over quite a period of time. And one of my favorite games was to have a chat session with him where he'd beat me with bamboo rods, and then I would, feel better afterwards and hopefully learn something. Yeah. But what happened was I began to see that there were correlations between people's states and the transits and astrological, configurations, like when aspects
Oh, wow.
formed. Yeah, and dude, it
That's
was
real science right there. I appreciate that. I would look forward to doing a lot more extensive case study into that. I can only imagine what you discovered. That's
well, I recommend it. I mean, it's a crazy,
and
it's
that
a
was brain
crazy,
activity.
yeah,
Wow, relative to the transits that are happening.
yeah.
That's so awesome. That's dope. That's so dope.
Well, it's funny when you have like contemporary mainstream scientists critique astrologers,
Yeah,
right? Because they actually don't know what they're talking about.
they don't at all.
No. And it's like, as an astrologer, it's like you could find yourself having a conversation with an average mainstream scientist, and they're going to come across in an arrogant, smug way, and they're going to diminish and belittle you. But in
Mhm.
the conversation, like, there's so many things to you that are completely apparent, that this guy is coming at you from such a narrow angle. He has no idea what you're saying.
No, it's like they're speaking a different language.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. Which is what makes me really appreciate the scientists who do get it and then know how to like um integrate their expertise, because that's really the only thing that as a community astrology is missing, like that higher level of scientific understanding and astrophysicists who bridge that. The breakthroughs there just be amazing. Not, but I think it also does exist too. They're just not getting published, which it would be amazing to see happen. Yeah, everyone thinks I speak Chinese when I talk about the planets. It is another language, that's for sure. But even you bringing that up is super fascinating. What did you come out of that feeling when you experienced that or did that experiment?
yeah. Well, what happened for me was uh, I tried different fusions of my technology. A buddy of mine, this great guy. He's a health food store owner. He owns a chain of health food stores. He's a down to earth guy, good friend. I've known him for a long time. I was living on the West Coast. He invited me to his home on Christmas Day. So I flew back and I hung out with him, and it was just a simple, like, dinner, a couple of drinks, chats. And I'd been working on, outside of an astrological approach at the time, kind of like a statistical and stochastic model for predicting group behavior. It was just like a mathematical project. And he had said something to me, Don, did you ever think about, instead of trying to forecast, did you ever consider, why don't you write some code algorithms that might in some way help people? And I had kind of thought about that before, and I wasn't really sure. And then I went back home, and I was also studying astrology because of the influence of my mentor. And I started to realize that patterns that were forming in the code were having unusual characteristics in relation to stellar aspects. And at first it was a surprise. It was kind of a shock. It's like, well, that's unusual. It's just got to be an anomaly. It's a coincidence. But then I started to realize, like, oh, when there's certain kinds of behavior or activity going on in the solar system, that pattern, it's bifurcating, it's changing, and it's impacting all kinds. Like, how in astrology they have these things called tables of correspondence.
Okay. Where they
Right,
have
so-
like the planets and like the transits, and I think.
Yeah, so it's like, you've got like this table where it's like, there's different authors or different versions of it where it's got, you've got a table that lists the planets. So you might have like, Jupiter, Sun, Saturn, da 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 da. And then the correspondence might be, say, for metals or for herbs, right? So it's like we would say Saturn is lead,
Right.
and that kind of thing. So what they're doing is they're linking attributes of physical things to planetary forces, right? So the sun would be gold,
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Mhm.
And then what they do is they carry that concept over into things like animals. What kind of animal would a Saturn animal be?
Right.
What kind of animal would a sun animal be? Like a lion. A lion is like a Leo, right?
Mhm.
A scorpion would be Plutonic. So you have all these different kinds of attributions, and then a person asks, well, are these attributions arbitrary? Are they just like fictional? Are they only interpretive? But then you end up finding out, oh, no, actually, they're tangible expressions of a singular, very real field of physical energy. There's a physical energy that's vibrating, and as it vibrates, it throws off reflections of itself that crystallize and form into very specific things.
Damn.
So, like, if we look at consciousness as a continuum of time and space, then in the continuum of time and space, we have these singular threads that run through, and there's nodes on that thread, and each node is related by some kind of familiar sort of concept, and they're distinct. Because if I said to you, here's some Mars, Pluto aspect, objects, we have like the game Clue, we have a knife, we have a revolver, we have red fabric, we have a scary looking monster. There's a common theme that runs at the root of all these things. They
Yeah.
are related, right?
Yeah.
And so what we know is that there's layers of patterns. Like there's patterns that are all linked to each other. If we say Venus, like yourself, like if you're talking about an aspect or a transit that's coming up and you're saying like, well, here's something lovely that's going on with Venus and Jupiter, Venus and Sun. First thing you do is you go into your memory bank and you look for objects in the mind that are attributed to that aspect. But what that means is you're actually accessing a specific real place.
A process. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what you're saying is everything that I'm learning in this astropsychology course.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah.
I love it.
As far as like archetypalization and finding ways to personify and make real the signs and planets, which I really love, because now in realizing a lot of what you were saying before reminds me, and I was going to ask, can you relate that to quantum entanglement and how even at an atomic level, everything is connected? and that's how we kind of decipher these layers and symbols. It's amazing.
Give me 1 second. I just lost sound here, and I
No
don't know
worries.
why. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second,
I
buddy.
hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm going to grab a different set of headphones here.
Sure. Yeah, y'all. I mean, the this is really potent stuff here, and thankfully, there's how do I say it?
Yeah, we're all good.
Oh, you can hear us? Hello?
I think so. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. Well, because there was a lot I kind of said there. I was really kind of wanting to touch on how you did mention the layers of how everything's connected, but also how do you think this relate or a lot of what you're saying relates to me with what I'm learning about quantum entanglement, and in learning to see myself as less as a physical or solid being and more a frequency, right? And tapping into that place you go to give that like real place and symbolism. But what do you feel about quantum entanglement and how that connects to?
Yeah. The thing with quantum entanglements is that we have the polarization of state and state carrying some kind of an information signal, where the potential of like very lengthy distance can exist, and you have one local particle that undergoes some kind of modification, and then it's magically affects a particle that could be at a remote distance. So we know that's true. And I think that what you're saying is very germane in the sense of, from a functional standpoint, it's very similar concept-wise as to what we suspect is going on with transits, meaning that if you have a distant action, say an aspect, say Mars is trining Jupiter, well, it's not happening up close and personal. It's happening at a great distance, but somehow that activity is translating into affectation at a distance, where here we are, we're on the planet, we're a long ways away, from that activity happening, but we're still picking it up. And I think that, like, the premise being that, is there probably some kind of relation with quantum entanglement to that process? I'd say yes.
It's I'm looking forward to the breakthroughs that may occur, and actually it's really amazing too, given how long you've been doing what you've done. I'm sure with the time that's elapsed, there's so much more, not just confirmation, but it's probably greater discoveries you've kind of come in with that too. As far as, or what I'm wanting to ask is, what are certain long-term benefits that you've discovered with working with these frequencies, or with frequencies in general?
I mean, I could point to a general increase in vitality, mentally, emotionally, physically. I mean, that's like a common element, like the sheer number of like people that are going through like pretty tough times, like mentally, emotionally, mentally, like physically, when they come to me and they experience benefit, and they're surprised, because a lot of times it happens fast, right?
Right.
And they're genuinely often shocked. Um, and for me, although I've gotten more accustomed to hearing those stories, uh, on a personal basis, I just feel grateful. I feel grateful that they're doing better, because the thing is, when you talk about the long term,
Mhm.
the long term is that we should really be here in this reality, for however long we're in this particular reality, to love and serve other people, because that which makes us human that which makes life worth living, the moments that matter the most, the pearls that are on the string, are those experiences where we're connecting in a meaningful, sincere way with other people. And, we end up feeling like we're coming away from an interaction, having improved their lives and having,
Mm.
felt like we're better ourselves. So long term, my hope and goal for this is to see people become more coherent. And when I say coherent, I mean energetically, more focused, much more in touch with what matters to them in life, like their emotions, like the positive, healthy emotions. Because realistically, if people were feeling better and doing better in their immediate local lives, and there was enough of that going on,
Mhm.
change happens. It's funny because a lot of people, and I go through the same thing, but like we see all this crisis going on, and we see all this chaos and mayhem, and the reality is, that which makes human beings important and meaningful, it's still there. It's just been dampened by noise. And
Right.
so we have the ability, and I think we also have a beautiful responsibility to try to get ourselves back into an intact state and shine and radiate and maintain that signal. It's like you're a beacon. It's like you're when the night is dark and there's a lighthouse in the middle of a stormy ocean, and it's just shining that light, the number of lives that it saves, the amount of hope that it gives.
Yeah.
So when people listen to my frequencies and they use them, and they actually feel better physically, mentally, emotionally, quickly, and powerfully. The goal is that sets out kind of a reverberation, that they support the people around them. And the long-term goal is, let's try to get our collective society as much as possible back from the precipice,
Mhm.
and let's try to get it back going towards a place where having a peaceful, loving, calm, happy, joyous day is normal for everyone.
And that's what I appreciate about this, because one thing that I've seen a lot of people express interest in is knowing that they're bombarded by frequencies, and knowing that they have to protect their space and protect against psychic attack, and knowing that they're being psychically attacked. And one big question I always get is, how do I protect myself from psychic attack? How do I defend myself from psychic attack? And I've always wanted to demystify that from people, so that they wouldn't feel like they have to pay some witch doctor $500 to like do this or do that. The best thing is to align yourself with God. But I really do appreciate how this is so practically effective. And like you said, for many people, they come into results fast. You know what I'm saying? Feel frequencies fast. For those of you who are interested, in the description box and on my website under the tab Sound of Stars, you'll actually see the link to access, to feel better fast with these frequencies. I would like for you to, there's also the bio for Doc Stars here. Please check him out. You'll be able to read this excerpt. For those who may be interested, you really did answer this already, but could you go more into the specific frequencies you produced, and what people who may purchase these frequencies will be getting?
Yeah, for sure. So what I did is I took a look at the kinds of energetic fields that come off stellar bodies, and then how do there's a lot of different schools of thought that looked at this general topic. So one was the Eberton school in Europe, astrobiology. And in the value in that kind of data was that they were looking at thousands of case studies where they would have different kinds of disease conditions
Mhm.
associated with different kinds of astrological aspects. But what I found was that there were certain kinds of energies that were constantly coming off aspected and transiting planets, and that they could be determined to an average profile, and then they could be sonified. So in data sciences and in the physical sciences, a big area of exploration over the last 10 years was a process called sonification. Sonification just meant that you would take a data set, or just like, let's say you did a survey of a system or natural process. You would convert the data into sound. And then the idea was that when it gets converted into sound, if there was anything important there that was missed through other kinds of analysis, there would be an emergent pattern. So a pattern would emerge. So what I would do is I would monitor different kinds of, like, it started off as biological process. So in some cases it was like volunteers where we would take different readings across the skin. So thermal fluctuation, galvanic skin response. The basic idea was just that when there's a certain pattern in the sky, does that pattern translate into an artifact inside the body that's determinable? And so what we found was that was the case.
Wow.
Yeah. And not only that, but that also the patterns tended to be uniform across populations and cultures. And I've got a bunch of tabs. I'll show you just some of this really quick. There's a process called eidetics. And I'll just try to see if I can share my screen here. This is an example of the kind of thing that we're talking about, but in a really tangible way. So what happens in the blood is that you actually get a shape or morphology response to archetypal fields, which basically means, so what that basically means is that, I'm just going to see if I can get my window working here. Give me 1 second, dude. Let me know if you can see this.
Yeah, let me actually add this to the stream.
And then I'm going to just try to navigate to. Can you see blood anomalies?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to scroll through this quickly, but basically, this is an associate I've had for some time. And what they were finding was that a person's health conditions would often reflect on a microscopic scale as a crystallized form, often derived from just like, mineral salts and fatty substances in the bloodstream. But to give you an idea, one patient literally had a fractured femur. And then what you would actually see when they did live blood analysis would be this small little apparent icon of an object that appeared to resemble a broken femur, but on a microscopic scale. And then they would see that different kinds of formations of crystals in the bloodstream that would correspond, to what was happening to the person as a whole would occur. And they've got a huge archive of this. And I've seen this change on a regular basis, where we're seeing a microscopic reflection of a whole state happening to the body. Like a simple example is someone that gets, say, if they get poison ivy, they're on a camping trip and they've been rolling around in poison ivy. I've literally seen blood where you see like poison ivy shaped, crystalline, particulates. They look like little bits of poison ivy. But this kind of phenomena, if it was just in the blood, you'd think like, well, it's probably just a coincidence, or it's just some kind of. But the problem is we see eidetics happening across a lot of different avenues. So I'll just give you like an example. So there was a fellow who developed a acoustic signal that increased crop yields by 200 to 400%. This was a number of years ago. It was called Sonic Bloom. He just sold it. And what Sonic Bloom was is that he had determined that the song of a certain bird stimulated by resonance something called the stomata on the surface of certain kinds of crop leaves. And all that basically meant was that if you took the leaf of this crop plant and you examined it under a microscope, what you found that was on the surface of the leaf was a pore. It was like an opening, and it was loosely called the stomata. But the part that was the trigger for the stomata to open so it could receive nutrition and sunlight and water and whatever was a little tiny chamber that looked like a violin case. And when the violin case was stimulated by resonance, it caused the stomata to open. And what
Wow.
happened was that little tiny chamber.
Resonance. That's
It,
so. Resonance means it vibrated at the same frequency as that.
yep,
That's wild.
yep, yep.
Holy crap.
But what we have then is we have an increase in vitality of 200 to 400% through the direct use of resonance, and it's linked to the natural background. The stomata would tend to respond to the bird singing. So there was like a link in between. But the interesting thing is that we can also link this to aspects, because what you would find is that often these birds would sing at their peak output during certain kinds of astrological transits.
Wow. And these are like patterns. Those are the patterns that surface. Yeah, that sounds like a science to me. That's replicable, and I love that. That's amazing. And we know, and I want, it's very distinct here because a lot of this is tropically based. So this is based off of the sun's path through the signs and not the constellations, for those who are wondering if this is more sidereal based. So I really do appreciate that. Once again, yeah, similar to what Nikola Tesla talked about, it's it's very amazing to see what is going to inevitably be done with that. This guy speaks to the new sciences. I think what you're doing and have been doing is just one of the most important things, really, for the culture, because it's specifically down to how quickly and effectively these work. It's helping me take this approach like I'm taking with manifestation, where I wouldn't listen to these frequencies as a quick fix. Like, oh, I need to do, even though they work really well. Where can we find Doc Stars on social media? Um, if you have a Facebook or Instagram.
Sure. I mean, I think the best way is to view the comment section of this video below, because right now the best way to connect with me is through the Peace Dealer,
Okay.
and then perhaps at some later dates. There's other places that we can talk about. But the best place I would suggest that you should get in contact is go directly to the Peace Dealer's link in the comment section below. Does that make sense?
Or the description box. So I'll comment it down below, but in the description box, you'll see his bio, and then you'll see the link that I have. So you can check out those two links, and you'll see extra information there. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it's actually both ways. Like, the point I wanted to say is, it's best to not see this as a quick fix, but a lifestyle, like things that I'm gonna just play every day to augment what I'm doing. But it's nice to know that it also does function as being able to address a specific need in the moment, which is awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been in situations where there's people that have had like long standing chronic issues, and while there have been cases of like profound apparent remediation of the issue in a short term, I always tell people, very similar to what you said, in that don't try to like. It's fantastic that the technology is supportive. I'm happy for the impact it's had in my life and in the lives of
Mhm.
others, but never substitute this or any tool, for your own self responsibility, right? Like I wouldn't want to see, say, someone, you know, rely only on my technology, but then not take a look at, say, bad habits that need to be changed.
Right.
I'll give you a really quick story. So a buddy of mine, when these frequencies are used, they can be used either as sound or through like a silent emitter. There's like a cheap little silent coil. It outputs the signal as as a weak varying magnetic field. It just gives you the option. You can listen to it as a sound, or you can play it silently. But when you play it silently, what can happen is it can put a radius of a 5-foot field, like a bubble, around you. Nobody can hear it. And I had a buddy who he wasn't a heavy drinker, but he wanted to hang out, and he'd had a few beers, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and he had smoked a little bit of a joint. You know, he wasn't like a chronic, but he'd smoked a little bit of weed. And I was doing experiments with a detox frequency, and he was a really good friend of mine. Right. And I had it strapped to my wrist like a little coil, so nobody could hear it. And he saw it on my wrist, and we were hanging out, and he had just had a couple of beers, and he said that he asked me what it was. I said, I'm running a detox frequency, and he goes, oh, I feel kind of funny. And I thought he was far enough away, like, so he wouldn't be affected. Right. And I said, well, how are you feeling? And he says, I feel like I need to purge. And I feel like I've got this like thumping rhythm going through my body, and it feels like it's coming from you. And I just said, buddy, I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to affect you. So he excused himself, and he said he tried to get home as quickly as he could. And he said he had stuff coming out both ends. And it was, and it was like a really strong purge. And he said it was a very intense experience. And then he laughed afterwards. He says, I haven't felt that good in years. Wow. You know, so it's like, he kind of teases me, right? He's just like, you know, I don't know if I would have had to have purged like that, you know, if I hadn't been around you and that tech. But then afterwards he was like, but I sure felt better afterwards. So you know, there are going to be situations where just because the technology can help you, don't use it as a crutch. Right. You know, use it as a support tool.
That's so inspiring. That's so awesome. And it really leads me to my next inquiry. Shout out to Monica. Monica is a good friend of mine who brought to my attention the existence of patents that exist, which infer the use of frequencies as weapons to kind of influence or control people. So I can imagine someone like you, or you specifically, can identify ways that they're used that most people like us or me like aren't even aware of. I remember I was recording another friend of mine in El Paso. We were recording in a studio, and when we played back a clip of whatever, there was nothing recorded. We heard in the playback at a low frequency radio waves and like an advertiser. And we were just kind of thinking, wow, imagine if like they keep it this low on purpose just to like influence people, or if that's just how it could work. It just kind of makes you respect or take more seriously what's possible. So what do you feel about that though? And how frequently do you think these are used? Is the tinfoil really an exaggeration, or is it really that crazy?
I hate to say it, but yes, it's really that crazy. It's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. Oh my God, that's wild. Damn.
Yeah. Part of the reason. Oh, say again.
Like migraine inducing worse, like.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's all around us, unfortunately.
Wow.
Lots of different avenues. I mean, if you went back 10, 20 years, it was still relatively pervasive, but at that point, probably the greatest hazard to the average, person living in a first or second world country was the 60 hertz cycle electrical system in homes. The reason is that, unfortunately, the electrical wiring in the standard North American home, just the current rate tends to be very adverse generally for health. But these days, it's like we're getting it from, like person's driving in a downtown street, and they stop at a traffic light and they're right next to a huge cell antenna.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very pervasive. It's very unfortunate.
when I go out to the mountains out here, and I didn't realize until my friend kind of brought it to my attention. Shout out to her, but like you can't hear anything out there,
Hmm.
and I didn't appreciate that until it was brought to my attention because it's like night and day, and I didn't realize how necessary that is, to what kind of barrier that brings. So, I mean, we know we've just established right now it is definitely possible. I mean, there's all these frequencies around us. So, and I appreciate one of the frequencies you have is in protection against psychic attack, right? So what's a great way for people to approach using the frequencies you produce or frequencies in general in protection against the frequencies being projected at you and just in general?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, there's a few different principles at play. And so, you know, I use an approach that's first and foremost a scientific one. So there's an examination of existing literature in relation to frequency response, physiologically. But I'm also very much, at the same level of, trying to understand and produce from, for example, an astrological perspective, because there's a correlation. But a simple answer would be um, there are protocols that we outline. So if a person were to try some of our frequencies, we would provide basically an educational kit. It's not complex. It's not complicated to use, but there's a few basic principles, to get it down. So one of the principles is resonant entrainment, and resonant entrainment just basically means here's a pattern. If we repeat the pattern, this is what will happen. And so with our frequencies, what will, like, every single frequency is literally a pattern of basically experience, behavior, whatever. So if a person is scared or they're sad or they're feeling weak, whatever it is, when they play one of our tracks, what they're actually doing is they're playing a pattern that their body already naturally recognizes. So here's an example. We have one track, it's just called Good Luck Evoker. Some of our frequencies, they sound like basically like simple little children's melodies. But the funny and the weird thing is too is that when people play these, they go, "That sounds awfully familiar. It's like I've heard it before."
Mm.
And the reality is they have heard it before because it's linked to an internal process that actually goes on in the landscape of their own bodies and mind, but they've never acoustically heard it before, right?
Mm. Oh, that's deep. That's deep. I love
Like
that.
you might remember, Michael, I wouldn't be surprised if you were one of those kids that when you were between 5 and 10, you were probably a little bit different from other kids. You probably had, I would guess, just based on my interaction with you, you probably had the ability to see outside the box. You probably had an ability to be more aware, perhaps than, a lot of, like, if you were, thrown into a school system, you probably had a sense of what was actually going on and, how to navigate it. And you probably had maybe little routines that you did that were happy, joyful, fun, playful. And you might have inside your mind, inside your emotions, had these almost, like melodies. Like when you were in a good mood, it's almost like there would be a melody going on inside of you.
That for sure.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
those melodies are real.
Okay. I love I almost have chills how mediumship works because I didn't realize that that's how I wanted to put it in words, that it was like a melody that I didn't know how to like put there, but I really love how you said that. And one thing that blew my mind right now about I feel like you just gave me the next step or helped me understand it, right? As far as I just learned, shout out to Mark Houghton or Marcus Houghton, but one thing that I've been learning, especially what he's really greatly broken down as far as the process of manifestation, is basically simplified. You set an intention, but more so the way manifestation works is you have to impress a program on your subconscious mind until it believes it. And you really much just explain how that's what these frequencies do. Like you're impressing this on your subconscious until it changes your behavior and does it. And it's like the advice that they gave is to do this, and now this is the tool that you can basically use to hyper accelerate that, which is amazing, super amazing. I was gonna say, especially with that, I was gonna ask, you don't have to have headphones on either. Like it just has to. You have the silent option, so it just has to be in your arena. Do you recommend there be headphones, or you just want to be in the?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, and I think that that also ties into what you were speaking about previously, because you were asking about some, conditions and how do you offset like the negative frequencies, etc. You certainly can use headphones. Some of the frequencies are designed to target the brain or mind. Other frequencies are meant to be a kind of like a whole body. So whether you use it acoustically or with a silent version, it can be helpful. One of the things that we say is volume equals dosage. So the how loud is the track played, and for how long. So we always recommend that if you use a track, you don't want to play it past a comfortable audible hearing level. It should always be comfortable to your hearing. But the trick, and these are one of the principles, the trick is that if you're playing it as sound, you want to adjust the volume so the vibration can be at least gently felt across the skin. So it's like if you're in a room and you're playing the sound, then there should be at least a mild sensation, vibrational sensation across the skin. So you say you're playing it on a stereo, and there's like maybe there's a bass and then a high pitch. If you can sense some kind of activity across the surface of your skin and not just hear it, chances are like we get some pretty profound phenomena. Like we've actually had medical labs like examine tissue change and blood change after exposure, and sometimes it's been quite significant, like before, during, after. But that comes through dosage equals volume, and then also, like you said, this you want to repeat the track. What'll happen is if somebody puts a single track on for say a 45-minute playback, they'll often go through a range of curious sensations. And so sometimes it can be there's a term like sonic crack. Some people have joked about it, where like they'll get like a really profound euphoric state, like really profound, but there can also be, in some cases, there can be a mild agitation, and what that can be related to is the frequencies are working, and they're dislodging something from the body and mind, but that which is being dislodged does not want it to go. And so, and because we're using resonant entrainment, we're actually pushing whatever that negative state is out. And sometimes that negative state will panic. And the way that it will, like, there's a really interesting correlation. If you look at a pot of boiling water, there's a thing called Bessel cell formation. So you basically have very quick states when you heat a pot of water. It will jump. Have you ever noticed that you'll get a few bubbles coming out before it jumps to boiling, and then it just jumps to lots of bubbles? Yeah. So that happens in consciousness. If you've got a negative state, like if say a person's in a tough situation and they're having a really hard time getting out of a negative frame, what these resonant frequencies do is they dampen that, and then they superimpose a positive state. And it works very similar in a sense to putting water in a pot and boiling it, because a person, might feel like, the initial bubbles kind of starting, and then they'll panic, or they'll feel agitated. It's like, oh, they might have liked the frequency playing for the first 5 to 8 minutes, but now they actually feel something changing. And so they'll sort of panic. But if they can hold on, then what will happen is it'll jump to the next state where it's full boiling, and then suddenly they love it. And then they're like, oh, I get it now.
They release the resistance, so it raises resistance in them. But that's amazing. It's like an exorcism.
Well, it's a state change for sure.
It's a state change, right?
And you could certainly use the word exorcism in certain, like situations.
Context,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
Is it something that you can listen to while you're asleep?
You can. Like their frequencies are actually designed for sleep and also for calming. We've had members that would do that, and would do that on a regular basis, even play them while they're sleeping. Um, and I've done that myself and gotten some pretty profound results. But I think what we find is that at least half of users, it can be stimulating, right? So it's like, depending on the frequency picked, if they pick the stimulating frequency, it's best not to use that 2 to 3 hours prior to sleep, because
Oh,
yeah,
so there are
because
different types. Okay.
yeah.
It's awesome because I'm gonna just let the playlist flow, put them all on my phone. Just take time out to just like meditate because it's interesting. I've always had a resistance to meditation just because of my stubbornness and just not want to sit. But this actually makes me want to meditate now. Like just pop on a frequency and just like really tune into it. So I really appreciate this a lot actually. So yeah. You probably should play it over the live speaker at work. I'm really playing. You could probably be the frequency plug. So I love this. This is amazing. I would definitely love to invite you back on this channel because I feel like there's so much more. There's so much more conversations just off of this we can really explore. I'm starting to question intuitively or subconsciously now, I always walk around places with headphones on, which is not necessarily the most uncommon thing. A lot of people are going to have earbuds and earphones, but I wonder if most people subconsciously do that just to block away frequencies and is a form of
Oh yeah, for
right
sure, absolutely.
and how effective that can be. So I really do appreciate that. Does he have any frequencies for addiction? I can't believe that you don't. In fact, if you click the link below that I in the description box with that you'll see Sound of Stars / the Peace Dealer, you'll be able to access really awesome sounds, which I feel will have a couple there. What do you feel about that specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, the Peace Stealer has our best of collection. We have a number of different frequency collections with different themes, and like I say, like I'm a fan. I'm a super fan of Michael's. I've been enjoying his content the last while. It's very refreshing, actually, for me to see someone like you presenting this content, because it really needs, this kind of content really needs to be done, and I think it needs to be done explicitly in the style that you provide.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Because it's like there's a an intellect and a sincerity and a depth that you have to have when you're talking about this content to have make any real impact. And
Yeah.
there aren't a lot of people out there. And you strike me as that kind of person, and that's leadership. And that's like strong, humble leadership, like with heart. And that's what matters, really. But regarding the addiction, yes, I have actually designed frequencies that people feel have been useful in their own subjective. I have to be, just because I might design something that works, I have to be careful with what I say about it, just because of the way things are.
I love that you said that or did that disclaimer of saying subjective or whatnot, but I appreciate that thin line because it is very real. Or people can kind of come at you a certain way, but yeah,
But
it's
what
really
I'd say,
amazing.
thank you, sir. What I'd suggest is, maybe when we do subsequent sessions, there are some addiction related frequencies. Like we did an emulation of Ibogaine, which has proven to be quite an effective frequency track. But there's different themes that we can address, and the collection that Michael's offering right now, many of the frequencies in there will be definitely beneficial towards helping a person manage their state in relation to that. And there's other kinds of themes that we can talk about maybe in future podcasts.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely look forward to that. And yeah, other oh,
Oh, sorry, Michael. uh, do we have any time left? Like, do we have like a minute or two left? I could maybe give like a brief prequel. um, Here, hold on
yeah,
one second.
I was gonna ask you if there's any final things you wanted to mention or say. That's totally fine.
let me step you through a couple of just really quick concepts, and we'll use this as a teaser, like for our next conversation.
All right.
Bear with me. I'm just going to do a quick share screen here.
Sweet.
And then just let me know if you can see my browser.
There we go.
Okay. So I was talking about the morphology and astrology. There's quite a few things that we can cover in the future, but I wanted to especially show you what you're looking at here. This is one example of a variety of ones. But you see these patterns? Can you see those patterns?
You know what? The screen is just white. It's just a pitch white.
Oh,
yeah.
Give me 1 second here. Try that again. Okay, can you see my screen?
There we go.
Okay, so this is just one example. Can you see this pattern on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just a simple pattern. This is not the entirety of how my technology works, but there's a similarity with this. What you're seeing here are patterns that are made in the sky by planets essentially orbiting each other. So these are geometric patterns that are actually traced out in the sky itself. And there's also this thing in sound called kymatics, where you see a similar kind of structure form. That video that I shared with you, Michael, goes into that. And these are cymatic patterns. So you see how that's similar to this? So these are planetary patterns that form in the sky. And these are patterns that form with sound frequencies.
Wow.
And so you can see, and these are intrinsically linked to the nature of the sound tone itself. And then there's a few other things that some of you may have seen this. This is called the earthquake rose. So this is actually an image that's created by a pendulum on a little stand when there's an earthquake. And earthquakes are associated with Neptune, and this is often referred to as the eye of Neptune. And then I wanted to also mention this. This is from Steiner's work. It's called capillary dynamolysis, and the basic premise is that the quality of a moment in space and time can actually be derived through mixing metallic salts with organic matter. And what I mean by that is that you can actually get, like when, say, a planet conjuncts another planet, when you use this little instrument tool, you can actually see how the energies in the moment combine. And to give you an example of what I mean by that is Steiner found that in the wintertime, frost would crystallize on window panes inside shops in different ways, somehow in relation to the nature of the shops, meaning that if you were, I'll just read this. When Steiner noticed that icy crystals forming in winter on the panes of windows are different in a flower shop from those appearing on the windows of a butcher shop, he suggested to Pfeiffer and to another of his early followers, Lily Kalisko, that they experiment in the lab with the formation of crystals as a means of demonstrating what he called formative forces in nature. And can you see this image here?
Yep.
See, you see how fine.
Very green.
Yeah. So yeah. And you see how that's very similar to the celestial patterns, right? And then also to kymatics. And so this also affects our bodies. Like whatever the energy is in the air affects our bodies, affects our blood. And we also, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this before, but there are physical connections between the planets and themselves. So we literally have an enormous magnetic rope that goes directly from Saturn and the sun physically. And you see a lot of, it was only discovered recently. And then what was the other thing I wanted to show you guys? Yeah, that's just a prequel. There's a bunch of things that we can go into.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And just to kind of reiterate, that was the image of the cymatics of celestial patterns with, of course, earth patterns. That's amazing. Just seeing how they all like connect, you know. It's a Pisces principle for sure. And yeah, honestly, thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
I really do look forward on expanding this, especially it's learning that I'm going to look more into Neptune being with earthquakes too, and seeing how that will kind of push forward because Saturn's going to transit Neptune, so that probably might trigger a lot. But yeah, a lot of people can't wait to hear from you again. And in conclusion, is there anything you'd like to share as a word of advice or wisdom?
Yeah, I think it's really important, like for your audience to understand that, when Michael, when you are giving encouragement to your audience, you know what you're talking about. It's like, it's one thing for someone to, speak just feel good words based on, what they think is happening, versus someone who actually understands the subject content wise and has genuine intuition. And Michael has that. And, I'm happy to be in a situation where I can support and back up, what he's exhorting the audience to do, because I can see it from the perspective of my approach and my platform.
Appreciate you. That really means a lot. And
Absolutely.
for those who are interested, what is your zodiac sign and your moon sign?
Sure. I'm a double Sagittarius, and
Oh,
yeah, my moon is in Pisces. My rising sign is Leo.
okay. Leo rising, Pisces moon, Sag sun. So divine creation. That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Specifically, those dealing with metaphysical frequencies and seeing frequencies and stuff. That's so awesome. All right. I really do appreciate that. So you guys make sure you hit him up, check out his bio. I have the relevant links down below, and I will comment also on this video the link to purchase this frequencies for any of you who are interested. And yeah, you guys stay blessed as always, and until next time, peace.